Something magical happens when you turn off your phone and you truly focus on another person and allow them to share their story.
And now, coming to you from the K2 Studios in San Diego, California, it's the world-famous Chris and Christine Show.
Hey, what's happening out there? How you guys doing today? I am Chris.
And I'm Christine, and welcome to episode 53 of the Chris and Christine Show. The official launch of year number 2.
Yes, it actually is. If you remember last episode, that was our official 1-year anniversary episode, which means right now we are officially, as of today, on to podcasting year number 2.
Yes, we are. So, Chris, how does it feel to be an expert now that we've crossed through? We've crossed through our first trial year, and now you're into year 2, expert status. You've stuck with it.
So we kind of got the kinks ironed out right now. So by now we should be, grizzled veterans on this podcasting thing. So
grizzled veterans? I don't know what that means. Tell me.
Well, it's like, you're a vet. Like, you've actually done it. Like, you have seen the blood, sweat, and tears of the podcasting world, and that you are a pro.
Okay.
Professional.
Well, pro Chris, how does it feel?
It feels pretty good for the most part. I actually do enjoy doing the podcasting, and I really do enjoy the podcasting community, especially on Twitter. It's huge on Twitter and Facebook and on Instagram and all other fun places too. But it's really nice to really be appreciated for what we actually do. This little fun little project of a podcast, this little hobby, like, hey, let's do a podcast. It'll be fun. What are you doing tonight? You want to do a podcast? Sure. Whatever. Let's try this.
Well, and now in COVID, it's become date night.
Yes, pretty much.
Or date day, as it is today.
Yes, we are recording this on Sunday. Sunday fun day, everybody.
Yep.
How you doing? So, being that it is Sunday and it is a fun day, we are doing the podcast episode, what did you say, 53?
53.
Can you believe it actually made 53?
Or should we just call it episode 1 of year 2? Should we start the numbers over again?
No, I don't want to do seasons. I don't want to do that because I will lose track. And the reason why we put episode numbers in front of our podcast is really so we keep track of them and we figure out which episode is which. And it's just for catalog and reference points, things like that.
Oh, that makes sense.
Well, for me, it does. I don't know.
I guess if we were to start over again at 1, it would be 2.1, and I don't think you can do that when it comes to podcasting. So,
I mean, you can do whatever you want. I mean, it's up to you. That's the beauty of podcasting. It's really whatever you want to do. I mean, there's a podcast about anything and everything.
Yeah, there really is. It's such a huge community, and no matter what your interest is, I'm sure that you can find it in one of the podcasts that's out there. So, shout out to all the up and coming podcasters. Hooray for you, making it every week or every other week or once a month, however often you podcast.
Right.
Kudos to you for putting in the good work.
Good job. That's right. Give you a little applause if I had it, but I would give you one right now.
Well, Chris, what's been happening with you this week?
This week, last week we were telling you guys, if you remember, that our wedding venue in Hawaii, we were kind of debating on whether or not what we were going to do with the whole Hawaii situation, because Hawaii, the governor said, we're back to lockdown for we don't know how long, at least November. So we are getting married in November in Hawaii. Well, we were. We were, but after all of that wonderful news, we have decided to pivot and make the ultimate decision of having the wedding here in town in San Diego. No more Hawaii. Hawaii, we'll get back to you when you guys are open and you got everything figured out. But as far as right now, we have canceled our Hawaii wedding.
Right. But what was that trigger point, Chris? We went and we visited somewhere on Sunday. And do you remember the conversation after that?
You're talking about the backup wedding venue we went and saw in Point Loma? Mm-hmm. This wedding venue, it happens to be the girl, what's it called?
The Thursday Club.
You know what? Why do they call it the Thursday Club, not the Friday Club?
Because they used to meet on Thursdays.
Friday Club sounds more important because it's Friday. Yeah, we're going clubbing.
Oh, come on. We went to the Thursday Club.
Yes, but it was funny. We went to the Thursday Club on Sunday. You need to go there on Thursday to really get the full effect.
Yeah.
But anyways, you went to this club. It's at, when was it built? In the 20s?
Late 1920s, early 1930s.
This big club with a stage and an outdoors like patio garden area with a fountain, and it overlooks the ocean. Big panoramic views of the ocean of San Diego, out there on the ocean, so Pacific Ocean. So we're going to have our wedding there in the outdoor garden because so far in California, they've restricted the inside. So nobody can have anything inside. So we're going to have to do it on the outside. Right.
Well, the governor just came out on Friday and said that churches can begin to meet. And this falls under like the faith organizations that the Thursday Club does. But you can't have more than 100 people and physical distancing. So, but that came out just this Friday. So we did go to the venue. Fun fact, Chris, when we decided to get married in Hawaii, it was because we'd gone out for quotes on like different venues in San Diego. And I remember we were on our flight to Hawaii last October and we were talking about wedding budget and finances and what kind of an event we wanted to have. And when we looked at the numbers that came in from San Diego, it was like way out of our budget, right? Do you remember that?
Well, if you want something on the ocean overlooking the beach and all that stuff, of course. But if you wanted like a simple backyard wedding, it's whatever. But
right. But what we wanted was that kind of ocean view. And when we'd gone out for quotes, we were looking at like $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 for a small intimate gathering with a reception. And at that time, one of the very first venues that I found online was the Thursday Club, and they had this beautiful view, and I thought it was absolutely gorgeous, but they had a requirement of a ceremony with an on-site reception. You couldn't just have one.
Oh, really? So, but right now, the way things, this whole COVID thing, it's changing minute by minute, because when we looked at on Thursday, the rules were you couldn't have anybody inside,
right,
any groups inside. Now they're saying you can. I don't know what the rule is really anymore, but we did do on Thursday. We talked to them, and I believe Christine did book it for our wedding. Just do an outdoor ceremony and the outdoor patio like deck area they have, right?
Right, yeah, because with COVID happening, a lot of companies and businesses and organizations, especially nonprofits, are trying to figure out how they can keep things moving forward and still have a little bit of income. And so the Thursday Club figured out, we have this beautiful garden. It typically seats up to 100, but with social distancing requirements, it can fit like 40. And so they can have small, they call them micro weddings of like 40 to 50. And the price is like we're allowed to just have a ceremony there. It's a quarter of the previous ceremony price. And we don't have to have the reception there. So we saved a significant amount of money, which is great because we're still fighting to get all of our money back from our vendors.
Yeah, we tried to cancel everything in Hawaii but the problem is some of the stuff we purchased with cash, like a bank debit card type purchase. So it's hard to get the money back versus, say, a credit card. Now, this is a little tip for everybody out there. If you guys ever book any trips, anything in the future where things may have to get canceled, I would recommend, if you have a credit card, use the credit card for those purchases, because what happens is you can call the credit card company and without any questions, they will dispute that charge and get your money back ASAP. Because some of the venues, some of the hotels, some places in Hawaii are being very, they don't want to give the money back.
Right. And it's understandable because they're like hemorrhaging money right now. But at the same token, like you can't provide a service because we can't go and get married. And at first, like the chapel, we were allowed to have like 85 guests. So we sent out save the date cards to everyone. And then they emailed us and said you had to bring the guest count down to 40. And so we had to send out these "I'm so sorry that you can't come" letters. And we felt horrible about it. And now they're saying, in Hawaii, the restrictions are down to 5 people gathering. And so the company has a clause that says, even if only 5 people can gather, we're still technically fulfilling our obligation to provide you a wedding ceremony, even if the only people that can show up are you and your fiance and our pastor. And so, they finally, with the lockdown extending, we think next week they told us to just hold off on actually canceling the chapel. We've canceled everything else because they might be able to fully refund all of our money.
Because they were only going to give us 80% back.
Not even that. When it came down to it, it was only going to be 55, 60%.
Of the money we've already spent on the place, and we can't even get there because we can't go to Hawaii. So how dare you not give our whole money back?
And I tried because, like, you know, we've talked about this a lot on the podcast. We really were focused on paying cash for our wedding, paying everything in advance. Well, it's come around to bite us in the butt, literally, because I'm not able to now get the money back. I paid for stuff like for the chapel. I paid for that from my debit card. It's cash money out of my bank account. I went to my bank to say, you know, I didn't use a credit card. I went through you. I used a Visa debit card. Can you help me recover the funds? And they said, no, when did you purchase it? And I said, well, I paid the deposit in November for services that will be rendered this coming November. And they said, well, it's more than 60 days from the date of purchase. You can't dispute the charges anymore. And I'm like, but it was the deposit. And so I went round and round. And so bottom line, our fate when it comes to the chapel money is in the hands of the chapel itself. And so we appreciate your good vibes.
Good. That's not good vibes at all. That's horrible.
No, we appreciate like good vibes being sent our way as they decide whether or not to refund our money this coming week.
Well, I suggested get the money back ASAP. Even if it's half the money, get it back ASAP, because there might be a point where you never get the money back, and I would be so pissed off. The whole situation pisses me off because if you cannot go physically to the island and you can't physically stay in the hotel, they should give you the whole refund back. You haven't been there yet. You haven't purchased their item. You haven't gone there and experienced their thing. And that's another thing too. Like the beaches are closed too. Like restaurants are closed. Even if you could go there, it's like no more than 5 people can gather at one time and everything's closed. Horrible.
Yeah. Well, but switching to more positive topics, the last week has been extremely stressful because we pivoted. And then we were like, okay, we have 2.5 months to plan a local wedding and we need to pay for everything and secure everything. I'm very happy to say we have all of our major vendors and everything secured. Unfortunately, our numbers still have to stay small because our backyard, which is where we're having the reception.
Oh, we are?
Oh, come on.
Check that out.
Come on now. You know this.
Of course I know. I'm just playing it up.
Okay.
Play along. You know?
So our backyard is where we're going to have the reception is limited just to the same amount as the actual wedding reception or the wedding ceremony. So we're not able to have a large gathering as we would have loved to have all of our family and our friends. But exciting thing is through this process, I've met some really cool people, and one of whom is the pastor that's going to be marrying us.
Oh, really? Who's this guy?
Oh my gosh. You keep acting like you don't know.
Well, it's for the audience, okay? Gosh, play along, all right?
Oh.
So who is this person?
So he is a senior pastor of Canyon Springs Church, which ends up being in the same denomination as the one I was raised in. And he's a fellow podcaster.
What?
Yep, of the 10 Steps Further, 10 Steps Further podcast. And Chris and I have been invited to be a guest on their show.
Really? When we do this?
Well, we're going to be on their show this upcoming week on Wednesday. I don't know when the episode is going to air, but I got to go online and I watched their church service because I wanted to know more about them. And oh my gosh, I just fell in love with just his wife was actually preaching this week. And I really loved their message. And we're going to talk about that in at the end of the show today. But I just think that you find really unique people along your journey in life. And this week is no different when we think about the guest that we have on our show who has met some really unique people as she's progressed in her podcasting journey. And so I'm really excited to be able to talk more about that and more about the wedding right after this.
Hey there, K2 crew. We love having you as our loyal listeners.
To keep up to date with what's happening behind the scenes, check us out on social media.
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter.
And don't forget to follow our Facebook page.
Yeah, tag us in your favorite fun stories, and guess what? You might just end up on the show.
Ooh.
This is the Nostaljunk Podcast, where one person's junk is another person's childhood. I'm Matt McGraw.
And I'm Kyle Smith. Join us each week as we take a deep dive into your pop culture consciousness and discuss everything from movies, TV, music,
Cartoons, toys, video games, and more.
And we want to hear from you, so connect with us. Nostalgia means so many different things to so many different people, so share with us your favorite piece of nostalgia.
You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Nostaljunk Pod. And you can subscribe to us on all the major podcast platforms. Let's get this thing up to 88 miles per hour, and we'll see you next week.
Okay, and welcome back, everybody, and thank you for joining us again. And our next guest happens to be a stay-at-home mom who also, like everybody else out there, has got a podcast. Please welcome to the show, Shannon Hull.
Hello, and thank you guys so much for having me on.
Oh, we're so excited to have you on. I love having other moms on the show for sure.
It's true. I'm a full-time mom and now online education facilitator / podcaster / maker of dreams, all of these things.
Well, it's better than crusher of dreams, you know.
Sometimes I will say I am the dream crusher.
Oh, no. So, Shannon, what part of the world are you coming to us from today?
I am from Seattle, Washington.
Is that where you're at right now, in Seattle?
Yes, I'm in Seattle right now. I'm in the basement studio that I have in my house in our guest room.
You have basements in Seattle? No way.
It's true. We do. Yes.
So fun. Now, are you like in Seattle proper, like in the city or in the burbs?
Yes, I am in the city. I live really close to University of Washington.
Oh, that's awesome. Go Huskies, right? Isn't that what it is?
Go Huskies.
Yes, I remembered.
Are you a Seahawks fan?
I mean, my house, we are Denver Bronco fans, but we will cheer for the Seahawks when they're on. It's true.
Okay, backtrack. How did that happen?
My husband is from Denver. He's from actually a smaller town called Longmont, Colorado, and is a life Denver Bronco fan. So we wear both jerseys in our house.
I gotcha. Now, were you were raised in Seattle and he was from Denver?
I actually was born in Spokane, Washington, and then moved to Portland when I was 8. And then ended up in Seattle after I graduated from college. And that's where I met my husband.
Oh, that's awesome. What did you study when you went to college?
I was a marketing major at Santa Clara University.
Ooh,
marketing
fantastic.
major.
It's true.
Wow.
Yeah.
So are you currently doing that now?
No, like I said, I've been a full-time mom, for 9 years. So I did work in marketing before. Music is my own personal passion point. So I always had kind of these little niche careers on the fringes of the music industry, but I ended up in partnerships and promotions mainly. I worked for a company and ran their sponsorship of the Latin Grammys. And then I moved on to another agency and I did sponsorships for Xbox.
Oh, wow.
Was this the first Xbox when they first came out? Like Xbox, the original?
No, it was just the US Xbox team, 12 years ago.
Oh, not the game system?
Yeah, the game system, Xbox. But it was like the original Xbox. Isn't there only one?
No. You know what's funny? There's an Xbox One, which happens to be like Xbox 5. It's if you line it up. But
it all comes out of Microsoft, so it all comes from the overall Xbox.
Okay.
So you're
umbrella.
like that.
We have different generations of each Xbox, but it's all, whether it's 1 or 10, it's all an Xbox.
So you're like the original OG Xbox team. That's pretty amazing, or at least marketing for them. That's awesome.
Yeah. We were an agency and we did sponsorship deals and product placements, all that kind of thing. It was pretty fun. It was a great job. And then I traveled a lot and decided that this was not going to be sustainable if I wanted to have a family. And so I ended up leaving that job and I have been home with my kids ever since.
That's fantastic. Now, I know you get mad respect from me because moms that stay home to run the household, it is more than what people call it as a stay-at-home mom. You're a domestic engineer, spinning lots of different plates. But I was wondering, from your perspective, how has life changed as a full-time mom at home in the midst of COVID?
That's a great question. My first inclination is to say, well, everything has changed. And in some ways, nothing has. I think not having a break during the day to kind of clear your mind or do your actual work that you want to do while your kids are gone, having that time evaporate has been really hard. At the same time, I truly, truly feel like I have so much privilege because I do get to stay at home and I am not trying to balance a big career while trying to facilitate my kids' education. So for me, I feel like I kind of have no room to say that life has changed. And I feel so lucky that it's actually my job to facilitate this stuff for my kids, because so many people just have it infinitely harder.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So you were, before COVID shut everybody down, you were already staying at home already, right?
Yeah, I've been home for 9 years.
So was your child, was it a boy or a girl you have?
I had my son first, and he is going to turn 9 at the end of August, and my daughter is 5.
Oh, one of each. Check you out. So which one do you love better? That's all I want to know.
Oh, Chris.
I mean, I could tell you, but I don't want it public.
We all know it's a boy. Come on.
Oh, come on, Chris.
I love my baby angels equally.
Yeah, I say the same thing too, but we got a favorite,
But the way my mom says it.
It depends on the day.
Yes, exactly. And my mom, she is a mom of 4 girls, and she says, every star has its time to shine. And I told her, that's just your way of telling me I'm your favorite today. I'll take it.
That is so true. Every star does have their time to shine. Yes, that's true. And I will tell them, like, whoever brushes their teeth first is my favorite for 5 minutes.
I say that too. I do the same thing too. I always say who's my favorite of the day. Who's my favorite of the day? Whoever cleans the room first is the favorite of the day.
Yep. Yeah. And, I came from having a really nice career that I loved. And so for me, it really was a decision to stay at home. And I think the older I get, kind of the one thing that irritates me the most is when people say, I'm not built to be a stay-at-home mom. I could never do it. And I just kind of, I wasn't built to be a stay-at-home mom either. I am crazy type A for sure. And I am a doer. I have not a lot of patience, but I just kind of made the decision that this was going to be my job, and I run a tight ship, and I support my husband, who runs a pediatric dental practice here in Seattle. And that is really demanding. And I, support him in that. And so that's just kind of the way that our life works. But I'm not sure. I always have trouble when people say, like, oh, I could never be a stay-at-home mom. I'm just not designed to do that. I would argue that most of my friends would say that I am the last person they ever thought would stay at home. But it just is sort of what has worked well for our family, and it's great for my kids, especially now when they do need their parents more than ever for that security and something steady.
Well, some parents that I can relate to probably get very frustrated if their kids are there with them all the time and they can't get a break. They need that mom line time.
That's just all of us, right. That's just being a human being. But, women are taking on a lot in COVID, and I'm super proud to be a mom, and I'm super proud of my friends in my community that I've seen who have stepped up and said, okay, we're going to, figure this out. We're going to work, we're going to do this, and we're going to do the best we can. I don't know. I see a lot of warriors also.
Warriors, huh?
I agree with that. I really do agree with that. And thank you, Shannon, so much for calling that out. I've been having talks with a lot of my different friends that are ladies, and some have a full-time job and are working remotely from home while, doing all the things. And then there's others that, like you, were able to be full-time at-home moms. And it's thrown a lot of different, men and women, regardless.
Thank you for including us.
Right, regardless of gender roles, but it's thrown all of us for a loop. But I appreciate how you've kind of couched it as, like, the way that we approach it is really important too. And I think for us here at home, we have kids going in and out because we co-parent with other former spouses. And so for us, it's that additional layer of the balancing act of, okay, we have them on Monday, Tuesday for school, so we need to make sure they're on track, and then make sure that the next parent knows what to do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the other thing too, where I don't think there's ever been a situation where unilaterally everybody has it so difficult. And so on the scale of difficulty, like I said, like I feel guilty about the amount of privilege I have to stay at home in a house that's equipped with technology, with internet access. I have the ability to buy school supplies and be there for my kids. And so on the overall scale of how difficult this is, I think it's really important to remember where you fall on that. And so everybody else, this is not easy for a single person, but I have 2 women I know who have been going through breast cancer treatment and surgery during COVID, who have kids at home, who can't see anybody, who, I can't help them because they are so quarantined.
Right.
And so, you see things like that, and it's important to have that perspective, even though it's really hard.
Yeah, definitely. Now, you've brought up a topic that Chris and I clued into on a couple of your podcast episodes, but you talk a lot about privilege. So it sounds like something that you've had to kind of come to grips with around the privileges that you carry in this life. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's something that I really feel like as I have gone through the process of interviewing so many people, I do feel like I have awakened in a new way through the process of starting my podcast, honestly. It's not like I haven't known the privilege that I was born into and, not having any debt from college, being a white middle-class woman. But it just becomes more and more evident the more you talk to people that have different stories than I do, that you realize there are circumstances that you cannot possibly understand. And it's very important to own that. And it's very important to listen.
Yeah. So do you feel like you're kind of we're like in a bubble, so to speak?
Yeah, for sure. I grew up, in a really sheltered, amazing community, right? Like I'm not complaining about it at all, but yes, I was sheltered. My mom, did a really good job, not letting us watch rated R movies. And, so yeah, I was really sheltered, but in the healthiest way possible, I would say, like in the way that I would like to shelter my kids. But I also am fully cognizant that my kids are coming into a world that I'm not even going to fully understand. Mm-hmm. And so the importance of being honest with them about, homosexuality, about racial differences, about inequities. I mean, that stuff is all very important. And we didn't necessarily talk about those things in my house, but I think that's only because my parents didn't really see it. I don't think it was their fault. I think it was just because they were sheltered too, And so I think it's kind of an interesting thing when you're a parent and you can see like, okay, well, we live in a super liberal city, right? Where there are things that are a part of our conversation and vernacular that might not be as prevalent in smaller towns. But like my son is 9 and we talk about being gay. We have family members that are gay, and it's amazing that, for example, we can talk about Lil Nas X. And he loves the song Old Town Road. And I kind of just kicked into conversation. I'm like, hey, you know what? Another cool thing about Lil Nas X is like, not only is he like a awesome Black rapper, but he's also like one of the first gay rappers that's openly out. And he's like, oh, that's awesome. And you're like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like,
wow.
Cool. They're cooler than we are. They get it. They, with guidance, they understand and accept more than I think we did at that age.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I would say that that's very true, but I also think it's in an intentional approach to parenting, because a lot of our kids are exposed to maybe different ideas than how we were raised, but our position as a parent on whether or not we're going to allow them to understand that or if we're going to shut it down says a lot. So it speaks to you as a parent overcoming privilege and really building awareness of differences being respected and not being othered, for lack of better terms.
I did my latest episode that I did was with one of my good friends who adopted her son Jackson from Congo. And it was actually kind of embarrassing for me to admit to her that I really hadn't thought to talk to my own son, who's the exact same age as her son, about race. And so it just hadn't really occurred to me, because you're just like, oh, they're kids. They don't recognize it yet. But knowing now through these amazing conversations that I have had with people who have been willing to open up to me, they've kind of allowed me to see like, no, you really should be having these conversations. Like it's okay, and not to back away from those things that we were raised feeling were awkward or a little bit more taboo.
Right. And so you've mentioned having some of these conversations and briefly mentioned your podcast, but what is the title of your podcast?
The title of my podcast is Right in Front of My Face.
What made you decide to call it that?
Well, it is kind of a story, actually. I had taken a writing class 2 years ago. I love writing, and I had taken a class just as something kind of fun to do. And it was kids literature, writing children's books. And so it was a 6-month course. And at the end of the course, I hadn't finished a kid's book, but our instructor, who was amazing, said, let's just do a free write for our last class. So bring in whatever you want. And so I was kind of tired of my manuscripts, and I sat down at this little coffee shop right by my house, and I took 2 hours and I wrote a personal essay about my experience with postpartum anxiety. I hadn't really talked about it. I hadn't really done anything with it. I hadn't, I think, even fully processed it. And so I'm sitting sobbing at this coffee house, kind of getting all of this out. And I read my essay to my writing class a couple of days later, and it touched a lot of women because it's just still one of those taboo topics that we do not talk about often as a culture. It ended up becoming like a really powerful topic for a lot of us to talk about. And almost every woman, I think there were 10 of us in the room, almost every single one of us had said, this happened to me. This was me. I didn't realize it. So it was like a little, ripple effect that happened just in that classroom. And one of the women had some connections at the Seattle Times. And she said, I feel like this is powerful enough that I want to help it get out into the world. And so she did an amazing editing job. And I ended up having this piece published a couple of weeks later as an op-ed in the Seattle Times. And so
that's incredible.
It was. It actually was. It was like this kind of miraculous thing where somebody, I had a sponsor, this woman, Ruth, who said, I believe in this and I'm going to help you get it out there. And so that essay got published, and I had kind of a tsunami of support come back at me. I felt really naked putting that piece of writing out there and admitting, like, yeah, I took meds. I really was not okay, and I got over it, and I'm better, and it doesn't define me, but this is what happened, right? It was just like, this happened. It's okay. If it's happening to you, get help. And so I had people calling me, texting me. I had a couple of people say, I've been having panic attacks and I didn't realize it. And I just made an appointment with my doctor. And I felt like by really opening myself up and making myself vulnerable actually had so much value and helped some other people realize some things about themselves. So fast forward a couple years later, I had thought about starting a blog and had a friend be like, no, your personality needs to be on a podcast. And so kind of the rest is history, but I didn't want my podcast to be about me because I feel like my experience is limited. So I wanted to share these amazing stories that I had heard, and I have very generous people willing to come on and share. And so some of the stories that have come out have been, talking about reassigning genders and having a partner that's trans. My first episode is with actually my cousin, who talks about his experience coming out as a gay man in Spokane. Episode, I think 3 is my friend Tan, who is exactly my age, but shares her experience as a Vietnamese refugee.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And so, on and on, these episodes are just featuring people who you would walk by on the street and have no idea that they had had these powerful stories or they are carrying these burdens. And I just kind of felt called to, rip the Band-Aid off some of these wounds and say, let's maybe feel like we're not so alone in this.
So how is it within your podcast? And I'm trying to figure out the best way to ask this, but how is it that you share the stories without re-traumatizing the individuals that you're interviewing? Like, what is it in your approach that allows it to be semi-therapeutic, I guess, for those that are coming on your show?
So you have to find people who are okay and ready to share their stories, because I've asked people that aren't ready. And you
really?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, there are some topics that people are not ready to speak about. Like a lot of times, rape survivors are not ready to come forward with their stories. There are some people that have abuse issues that are just not willing or ready to come forward. And so part of it is, broaching the subject very gently and very compassionately and saying, hey, if you ever want a platform to share what you've been through, like, I would love to support that, and being ready for people to say no. But for the most part, the people that agree to come on have gone through some element of the healing process and want to put their stories out.
Right. I would hope so.
Yeah. So it's not, I would never pressure someone to come on the show. ever.
Right. And also, what I was saying is that you said that people who have stories, almost every person in the world, at least our age, has had some kind of something they can talk about. Everybody's got a story,
Everybody has a story. And also it's about finding just smart people too. So COVID hit, all of a sudden I find myself just feeling absolutely powerless and confused. And I put out a call on Facebook that said, hey, does anybody know an epidemiologist? Like, I just want to talk to someone smart about this. And I got connected with this wonderful epidemiologist from the UW School of Public Health named Allison Drake. And she and I put out actually 2 episodes where she just talks about COVID and answers my questions. And so sometimes it's people sharing stories, other times it's people sharing information. I do an episode with this amazing man named Kwabe Amoa Forson, who started kind of his own mission to feed kids in Tacoma, Washington out of his van that's a nonprofit called the Peace Bus.
Oh, wow.
And so it's him sharing his story about how he started the Peace Bus and his mission to spread peace and teach kids about diplomacy. And so it's finding people that are doing interesting things and with interesting things to share. Because there is so much amazing work happening that people have just taken on and decided to do. So it's been really exciting to go onto social media and use Twitter for good and find people that are doing amazing things and who want to come on and share them.
So going off of that, Shannon, and hearing about all of the different stories that you've been part of, I know you've briefly touched on this, but how has your podcast changed you as an individual?
I've thought a lot about this actually, because it has. I think it started off just as kind of a fun hobby. But then after I got through about episode 5, something kind of started to shift where something magical happens when you turn off your phone and you truly focus on another person and allow them to share their story. There's something special about that shared experience of compassion. And after a few episodes, it was like, no, I think this is something that I really want to continue doing. Like, I feel like it's important. And the tough thing about podcasting is there's kind of no way to know your reach.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you always can look at the stats. The stats should tell you like the different cities, as we always do, cities and countries.
You do downloads and I have my map and like my son and I actually love looking over the map because it's unbelievable how many countries have downloaded episodes. I'm like, I'm crushing it in France, like 150.
Really? I don't think we broke into France. Have we broken into France? I don't know if we have.
Downloaded my podcast. And so, you have, 4,600 downloads. That seems like a lot. I don't know. But you just have to know that something is resonating because people are continuing to download.
Yep, definitely.
So the hard thing is to not know reach, but I know how I feel when I put out an episode, and I'm enormously proud of the work that I have put out. And I'm so proud of the people who are willing to come forward. I'm feverishly working on season 2, and
ooh, there you go.
I know I did 10 episodes of season 1 and then ended up doing 5 more COVID related. And then I'm like, I got to stop here and really figure out what I'm doing. So I've booked about 9 episodes for season 2. And so it's just sort of something that until I run out of people who want to come talk to me.
Oh, you won't, trust me.
I'll keep doing it. But I do love it. And the podcasting community is incredibly generous, I have found, and super interesting. I decided to kind of really go outside of my comfort zone. I saw an open call on Twitter for auditions for a podcast sitcom.
Oh, wow.
What is that?
Exactly what it sounds like. It's kind of a new genre of thing, but I just thought, well, this will be a fun way to use my equipment. Like, I'll just try it. And I ended up getting cast in this podcast sitcom called Four's a Crowd.
Awesome.
And I play a woman from Minnesota who's like a busybody building.
Okay. Now you got to give me a little taste. Okay.
Oh, yeah, betcha. I'll make you a casserole if you're sick.
There you go.
We're like doors open, and it's just been unbelievable. And for somebody who has focused on being a mom for this long to be 42 years old and be like, I don't know, this is kind of fun. Like, I don't know where it will lead, and it doesn't need to lead anywhere, but it feels really good to be creative. It feels really good to be social and think outside the box and be able to, hustle a little bit. That was what I was good at when I was, my career self. That was what I was really good at. And so it's nice to tap back into that area of myself that was asleep, but I woke her up and she's back.
I love that so much. I love how you just said, like, it doesn't have to go anywhere, because I think that so many times as women, as in general in the American population, that we are driven to achieve something like, oh, well, we've got to get to this number of downloads, or we've got to get monetized, or whatever it is. But how has that philosophy of just doing something for the pure joy of it impacted your family?
I mean, I think for me, it's only affected me positively. Like, it's really fun to see my kids be like, whoa, this is cool. And it's nice to have them see me do something else. And so that's been really fun to be like, no, you guys, I'm smart. I am like, I can figure something out. And it's been nice too, to remember that you can learn new things as a grown-up, right? Like, I did not know what a podcast was. I have no idea what I'm doing even still, but I bought the equipment that would make it easy. Again, like, privilege allows you to do things for the sake of doing them sometimes. And this is one of those things where it's like, yep, I had the means to buy my mixer and the, time after bedtime to do it. And I know some really cool people, and, you're just able to kind of start something, but being able to put something out into the world that I feel like is good and contributing to a greater conversation has become now, especially now, more important to me than monetization, more than exposure, more than anything, is like just trying to put good out into the universe where I feel like there is so much negativity.
When did you start doing your podcast, if we haven't discussed that?
I put out my first episode October of last year. So I haven't been doing it a year.
Oh, okay. October of last year. Was it very nervous doing the very first episode? And did you take many attempts to get it down right?
You know what's funny? No, I haven't really ever done a lot of takes, because my show is, interview style. And because
right.
I do a lot of prep work before, and I kind of, the people that come on know what we're going to talk about, because I do believe that you need to know what point you want to make when you start, right? So you come on saying, okay, what do we want people to leave thinking, right? Like,
right.
I always want to educate about something, so we usually kind of know what we're getting into before. But my first episode, like I said, was with my cousin Joe, who I adore him. On the worst day, he's the best. And so he was like, I'm like, I've never done this before. So like, let's sit down. We shared a bottle of wine and we just talked into a microphone. And that was the first time I experienced where, like, you shut the door, you're in a room, your phones are off. And some people have kind of natural superpowers. My superpower has always been being a really good listener, and people tell me things, right? Like, I'm super curious, and I'm a good listener. And so something kind of happens when I'm able to focus on that level on somebody, to just be like, no, seriously, tell me everything about that. And my commitment to all of my guests is that I will be a nonpartisan, non-judgmental platform for their story.
So, but when you first got started, like the very first thing you did, when you got equipment, how did you even know what equipment to get? Because we jumped in here, we just went on Amazon and found whatever's the cheapest microphones we could find, just to see if it even works. If it doesn't work, well, like, we're out $20. Who cares,
So I have an uncle who's a freelance cameraman and has been in Seattle for many, many years. And I had been thinking about doing this podcast, and all of a sudden I kind of had a light bulb going. I'm like, oh my God, I need to call my Uncle Dave. Like, he'll know. So he set me up with his friend who's an audio engineer, and this wonderful human being came over to my house. He told me what to get. We kind of researched it. He said, I think this product is really cool. If you want to start off, I will show you how to use it. So he came over to my house, and I had gotten 2, cheap microphones and little boom arms. And
Right.
I knew I wanted to do interview. I knew I was going to have 2 mics. And I knew I needed to have a multi-channel recorder. Like I knew these things because I had had enough experience in production. Like I knew a minimal amount of things. And Gary came over to my house and sat down with me for like 2 hours and trained me on the Rodecaster and gave me like a basic knowledge of Audacity. And I found my first editor, I think through Gary as well. And then my second editor and kind of coach came later through the same person. So really what I really am good at also is knowing where I'm not good and having the humility to be like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but you do, and you're really good at it. So you can teach me how to do that.
Well, that's I can show you too. I know a few things, but not a lot. I've got a basic, but like if you heard our podcast, I mean, everything you hear, I did just by myself. So
I mean, it's amazing what you can learn. And I knew I am not the most detail-oriented human being in the world. And so I knew that I knew that it was worth it for me ultimately to be able to pay somebody to edit my podcast, because the amount of hours I would inevitably spend on it would just be excruciating and frustrating. And I didn't want it to be that. So my goal was always to kind of figure out how to get a couple of sponsors that would pay for my editor. And I think
there you go.
I think that's going to happen with season 2.
That's great.
Yeah. So it's, finding people that want to support your message and finding people you want to support also. But one thing I have learned is that you never get what you don't ask for. And so that's an important lesson that's helped me out too. And it's given me the courage to ask for guests that I wouldn't ordinarily have asked for.
Where do you get your guests from? Like, would you use a tool service or something?
No, it's all people that I've heard of or that are in my network so far. And and I've gotten a little bit braver with asking. So my first guest on season 2 is a author who I really, really admire. And I had seen her, she wrote a biography about President Trump.
Oh, wow.
And she had spoken to my writing class a couple of years ago, and she had kind of been on my list, but I thought there's no way that she would come on my podcast. And I follow her on Twitter.
Okay.
She is brilliant. And I saw that she had tweeted that she was willing to waive her Skype fees for any teacher, regardless of grade, that wanted her to come speak to their class about her book.
Oh, wow.
And so I saw her tweet that and I thought, maybe she is passionate enough about this election that she would come on my podcast. And so I DM'd her, told her who I was, and she agreed. And so it's just
awesome.
sort of about meeting people and kind of tapping in and just sort of having the courage to ask.
I had the courage to ask. I went on a Twitter rant one day. I went down every celebrity I could think of, and I just shouted them out. And I said, hey, what better podcast? Unfortunately, it did not work out the way I wanted it to, but...
Well, you have to be willing to get shot down.
Well,
that's the thing.
I get nothing. I got ghosted, so...
I think part of the beauty of being 42 years old, my husband and I have kind of joked about this, where relative to me auditioning for this podcast sitcom, I'm like, it's so weird. Like, what the hell? And my husband's like, or it's like what the hell? And so I think that's kind of, you get to a certain point where you're like, what I'm trying to do is more important than what people think about me trying to do it. And so what the hell? Like, sure, I'm going to ask. I believe in what I'm doing. And so if you say no, I'm at a place where I don't necessarily think it's personal all the time like I might have when I was younger.
That's so true. And I think that comes with maturity and with perspective. And I think that the more that we learn about others, it allows us to know like what we can handle. And I think that your message about being willing to accept rejection is really an important one. My mom has always said, like, the only thing they can do is say no. Like, that's the worst that they can do to you when you ask for something. And then she used to give me the mantra of you have not because you ask not. And so it's like, I'm going to ask for it. And, people,
true.
Yeah. People will look at life. They'll look at my life or look at Chris's and be like, well, you have all of this. Well, It's because we ask. We are willing.
I didn't ask. What are we talking about? I earned it all.
I think you're really right. And I think there's something also to being able to say out loud what you think you want and allow the universe to let those dominoes fall.
Yep, I agree.
Right? Like I did an interview. One of my favorite interviews, honestly, is with a psychic medium named Marjorie Young. If you haven't listened to it, do. She is amazing, but she speaks to that intuition, to that pull. And I totally believe that there's something to that. And you have to be able to say yes.
Yes,
also.
I agree. And, I would say that that's very true with us finding you, because Chris put out into the world, and he, in conversations with me, that he wanted to find some remarkable guests with interesting stories. And he came to me that very night, just like an hour later, and said, I've found this gal. I really like her story, and I think we should have her on the show. And so that manifestation happened, and we are so glad we had you on the show.
Because I just don't really think I am particularly interesting. I just think I have a knack for finding interesting people. So I'm really flattered, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity. I try to not talk about myself too much on the podcast.
Well, we appreciate you talking about yourself here. And when people find you super interesting, where can they find your podcast and find you on social media?
So you can find my podcast anywhere that you listen to podcasts. It's everywhere. I have a website, rightinfrontofmyface.net, where my whole catalog is. I'm at In Front of My Face on Twitter, at Right in Front of My Face on Instagram, and Right in Front of My Face on Facebook. I'm not that good at Facebook.
Yeah, who really is anymore,
I don't even get it anymore. And so I'm on Twitter and Instagram way more.
Yeah, Twitter. Twitter, when we got on Twitter, we kind of came late to the game. We had our podcast going for a little while. And then I'm like, we should probably do a Twitter page. And this was probably like months after we started our podcast, like a long time after.
Oh, me too.
And I get the Twitter thing going because I hardly ever use Twitter. And Twitter is like really huge for podcasters, I noticed.
It's crazy. I got my first troll last week.
What's a troll? Like, you trying to bug you for something?
I got the meanest comments. I posted something. So I did a bike ride with my son last week, and we biked across the floating bridge in Seattle. And it was really fun. But we wore our masks because a lot of people ride. It's kind of close passing. And our governor had tweeted about one of the cities in Washington starting to flatten their curve a little bit. And I retweeted it and I said, yay, Yakima. Now, everybody wear a mask. My son and I wore one on our bike ride today, and it was no big deal. And I put the hashtag Mask Up Washington. It's like hashtag Mask Up WA. And I haven't had a tweet get 100 likes or any comments, but this tweet did. And all of the comments were like horrific about my son's bike riding and how dare we wear a mask, and we don't need to wear a mask. It was crazy. But I thought that I would react more strongly to having people say such hateful things. But really, you kind of look at them and you're like, oh my God, like you're miserable. This is so sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was a real milestone for me.
Well, congratulations on getting trolled for your first time. I think that's definitely.
Have you got your first 1-star review yet? That's when it really stinks home for you.
Yes, I did, and it was so early on. And actually, somebody made a joke. I had a guest on who talked about her experience nearly getting divorced. She's episode 2, and somebody was joking. They're like, "Oh, it was probably her husband," because I think it was after that episode. But yes, I have gotten a 1-star review, and they didn't leave a comment, which was disappointing.
Same here. Well, we're in the same boat.
I think they just accidentally clicked the wrong button. That's my theory.
I love your positivity.
I don't know. It's so confusing to me, but it's also, I tell my kids this all the time. It's so much harder to be mean. Like, it takes so much more energy to be mean. You really have to think about it, when it's so much easier to be like, hey, great job. Love your podcast. Like, you don't really have to think about that too much, when that's reflexive. But it's important. I do try to tuck that in the back of my mind, because not everybody's going to like what you do. My mom actually is terrified of me putting myself out in public. Unlike your mom, Christine, she is not as risk tolerant. And so it's been kind of interesting to hear her voice in the back of my mind where it's like, are you sure you want to be doing this? Are you sure you should be doing this? Isn't this scary? And so, I've had to really kind of get over that as well.
Well, good job feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And thank you so much, Shannon, for being on the show with us today. And we are encouraging all of our listeners to go out and give 5-star, not 1-star reviews and subscribe to Shannon's podcast. And we are just so grateful that you joined us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Feeling some anxiety from life's little inconveniences? Need something to take the edge off and put a smile on your face? Then you, dear listener, have stumbled into the right place. My name is Miles Long, and I'm the host of the Laughs and Wreck podcast. This is an invitation to escape your troubles for a while and enjoy some fun and adventure. On this podcast, I talk about anything and everything, as long as we can have some fun with it. We will talk about fun, pointless topics, discuss news, play games, give amateur movie and video game reviews, drink, do Q&As, share and discuss food recipes, blow off some steam, have some interesting interviews with real and fake people, and so much more. Your interest is piqued, isn't it? At this point, you're probably wondering, where can I find this wonderful podcast and start listening? Check out the Laughs and Wreck podcast on Spotify, Anchor, SoundCloud, and Podbean. You can also find the show links on Twitter when you follow me at LaughsRec, or on the show's Facebook page. So drop in and visit me. Relax, unwind, and unclench from your stressful little life. Enjoy some you time and have some laughs and a little mental recreation here at the Laughs and Wreck podcast.
Hello, potential listeners. My name is The Vern, and I'm the host of the Cinema Recall Podcast. On most shows, myself, along with some great guests, we will talk about a movie and then some of the most iconic moments that happened in said movie. On top of that, you'll get bonus shows where I would give you short reviews about new and classic movies, or I'll just rant and rave about something going on in the entertainment industry. So come check us out. We're available on Anchor, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, most other places. Don't forget to follow us on social media. On Twitter, we're at cinema_recall. And then on Facebook, Instagram, we are Cinema Recall Podcast. Don't forget to email us your ad spots to play on future episodes. That email is cinemarecall@gmail.com. Hope to see you around, and thank you very much for listening.
Well, that was a wonderful interview to have Shannon Hull on the show today.
Yeah, it was really intriguing. I loved how she talked about just creating space for people to share their stories and share their journey.
And how podcasting, how it starts off being this little fun little like experiment, how it kind of blossomed to something bigger where you have a bigger perspective on the world and different people's opinion and views of everything.
Yeah, and I would say that's really true of our journey in podcasting too. You know, we started it out as just being between you and I, and if you listen to our earlier episodes, it was like life, love, hot topics, and we would like pull these news articles and talk about them, and we've really transitioned into featuring a fantastic guest most weeks, almost every week now, and inviting these other people into our life and them inviting us into their journey, and it's just so rewarding.
I think for me it's about sharing, really. Like I do this whole podcast because we don't charge money for the podcast. Obviously, most podcasts don't, and it's usually free. And for me, it's like I like to bring other people into it. So we kind of like share what we know and what we can talk about. It's like a big group, and I like to just I'm all about sharing. That's who I am. You know?
And I think that the more that we listen to the stories of other people, the more compassionate that it helps us to be. And I liked how Shannon was talking about that, about like compassion and just, building bridges between people that you might not typically meet in your life.
Right.
Yeah. And, speaking on that topic and going back to our earlier conversation about the pastor that's going to marry us, I mentioned attending their church online today.
Yeah.
And his wife was preaching, and she talked about this same topic like Shannon was, about the importance of sitting with other people's stories and not sitting there to try and make yourself feel better about, like, if something's really hard, like let's take the topic. I know we don't talk about like religion and politics, but let's take the topic of racism in America right now. And
wow, okay.
Well, and you hear of people going to their friends that are Black and saying like, basically they're asking them questions, but it's help me feel better about what's happening instead of let me understand what it is that you're going through right now.
It's like self-gratification, you're saying?
Yeah.
For like at an emotional level?
Right. It's like, I'm going to go to you just so that you can help me feel better about whatever hard things are happening. And so what Shannon was talking about, go ahead.
Oh, so you're saying like almost like it's like when you watch the really horrible TV shows, or you watch the ones where people are like the show Hoarders, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you watch the show Hoarders on TV, if it's still on, I don't know. And we see people pack all this stuff in their little house or their house, and it's packed in their house. How much clutter they have, how much of a mess, and they're not eating right, and they horrible. And you're like, well, at least that's not me.
Kind of like that, where you go to someone to maybe to make yourself feel better about it. So it's like a better example would be, let's say, Chris, you've been in a horrible car crash and you're in the hospital, and I come to see you and I just am standing there and I'm like, this is so hard for me, Chris. This is so hard for me to see you this way. And you end up saying to me, it's okay. It's okay. Like, I'm okay. Don't be so upset. In that moment, I should be there for you and your hurt. But in that moment, like the example I'm explaining, I've made it all about me and the discomfort I'm feeling instead of being there with you. And I think what Shannon was saying, and also what this sermon this morning was saying, is being able to sit with other people's stories and not try to make it about you and how it makes you uncomfortable.
That's hard to do, though.
It is so hard. And especially when we're talking about really messy topics like the ones that they talked about in church this morning was about racism, human trafficking, politics, all of the things that divide us. They tend to divide us because instead of sitting and listening to somebody else's story, we try to take our spin on it and make it about us.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's deep.
It is deep, but I think that Shannon's podcast helps to model for us how we can listen to the experiences of others on topics that might be a bit more controversial. I mean, she mentioned topics like about gender identity, about racism, about, a number of different factors that people have very strong opinions about.
And people are very divided about everything right now, and especially with the election coming up, and especially about everybody's actual emotional feelings. Because a lot of people do a lot of things emotionally charged.
Right.
What they say, what they do, who they vote for.
Mm-hmm.
I try to be more along the line of more, how do I say this? Technical, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah, more. You try to be like very logical and methodical.
Logical, yes. I'm very, very logical.
But what's funny
I put
is
logic before emotion.
But what's funny is when you're logical, you're actually very emotional about it.
Emotionally logical. That's a new term. Emotionally logical.
Logic. I don't know. I was going to try and come up with a blended word, but
whatever.
But what I was thinking about is how, this is all coming up in the midst of our wedding planning. And I was like this morning thinking of, well, maybe we need to put a sign up, like, please don't talk about politics at our wedding. But then I remembered our wedding is a couple weeks after the election. And so I was thinking, well, maybe it's not going to be as messy. But in this phase right now, like, everybody has so many opinions. And I'm wondering if it's more amplified because we have been so isolated from each other instead of being able to socially congregate and like freely exchange ideas and talk, that it's all like,
oh, please,
divisive.
Go on Twitter, go on Facebook. People are freely talking about everything.
But that's what I'm saying. I'm wondering if they're being a little bit freer on social media because we can't have in-person conversations to rub ideas off each other.
But this is not a new thing. People have been doing this for years.
Do you think it's been this rampant on social media before, though?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
When Facebook first came out or Twitter first came out, that's all people ever did.
About politics?
Oh, yeah, please. It was, come on.
Well, I don't know. I'm just asking.
People have had opinions since people have been around. And I think now with Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all those fun, wonderful, delightful messaging services, people have been very vocal about what their opinions are. And they're really the filter, unless you're a celebrity, and even then, people's filter really starts to go out the window.
Right.
They don't think. People, when they send something out on a messaging service like social media, they really do not think, can this impact other people? What I'm about to say. It's really a self-indulgent platform.
Right. So it goes back to exactly what I was saying before, is like, as a society, we've gotten away from being able to sit with other people's truth and just listen to it with, like, there's this thing, you can hear another person's opinion, and even if it rubs up against your own opinion, you can still sit and respect it. But I think that where we've come in our nation is like, if I don't agree with you, you're my enemy, versus I can hear your story and hear your opinion, and I can listen to it and then move on. But I think that we have started to become so hyper defensive about everything because, like you said, everything is so rooted in emotion.
Right. And I think for me personally, I think if everybody would use more logic and less emotion, we'd all get along.
Yeah, I was even thinking about, and I might still do this, like creating a matrix to help people lay out the major issues that are important to them in this election, and then to literally write out where each candidate stands and look at it from a logical perspective. Because I think sometimes we're like, I'm going to vote this party and only this party and this party forever. When what we might realize through investigating is there might be a different individual who better represents our morals and our conscience. It may have no impact, but I think like where I'm at with this election and politics is I feel like I want people to be more educated and intentional and less emotional about it. Does that make sense?
And I would take politics aside, and I would say less emotional about almost everything, like every single thing. Right?
Well, like not about love.
Of course, love too. Everything.
Logical love. That's Chris's next book.
Yes.
Look for it, Dr. Love.
It's called Logical in Love by Dr. Chris, and it's coming out on Amazon Kindle Fire. It's coming out on the paperback, and I believe it's going to be on hard book copy.
Hard book?
Hard. So it's hardcover. Well, no, our new one's called hard book cover. It's actually a big brick. You open it up, it's a pop-up book and everything. It's great.
You're such a nut. But that actually isn't a bad idea to like, and it does go back to, so we were doing our wedding homework last night with the getting ready for our vows and all of that. And so we were talking about these things like how we met and what we want our vows to be. And we were sitting down writing things up, and then you were mentioning how you approach things so logically, right?
Of course I do. That's how I do it.
And even like with dating, even with dating me.
What do you mean?
Like you said, like you approached it logically, and you took things slower, and you were very like deliberate about not calling me your girlfriend yet for a couple of months and those types of things.
Right, because even though emotionally you might pull you one direction, it's that you have to think about it. Like there's a lot of things emotionally people do that really can screw them over in the long run or later down the road. Like, I want to eat ice cream for dinner, but your stomach's going to say that was not a good choice.
Right, because you have a dairy allergy or whatever, right?
Right, even though it tastes good at the time, emotionally you are drawn to it.
Right.
Or even fast food, like crazy amounts of bad food, you eat a lot of it, and then you're 900 pounds later, and you can't get out of bed, and you're like, what happened?
Right.
But emotionally at the time, you're drawn to that. You have to think logically speaking, what will this cause long term? And it's just how I operate for the most part.
And I think that's been really helpful in our relationship as we've been stepping ourselves towards marriage, is because of what we've been through. I think we're a little bit more logical about it. Of course, we're in love. We really do love each other. So there's a lot of emotion there, and we're very connected. But we also know like marriage is, in addition to it being about love, it's I don't want to say like simplify it, but it's a contractual agreement. It's a business. We're establishing the business of our household.
Well, a family really is a business if you think about it. There is a CEO. Usually it's the wife because she.
I love that. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Usually she's the CEO of the company, and the And the husband, he's usually the manager or assistant manager, really. More like that. Because the assistant manager always wants to be the boss.
Or chief financial officer or something like that.
No, I like assistant manager because assistant managers are always horrible. There's always the manager. The managers at a company are usually like kicked back in their office. Okay. And the assistant manager, he's the guy that always wants to be in charge, but he never is. So he always tries to be extra authoritative towards the employees, where the manager's always kind of kicked back and he's like, okay, well, have Assistant Joe take care of it. So he'll go with like, hey, you need to be doing this and that, and blah, 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 and then all that stuff.
Wow, tell me how you really think about me.
Well, I love you, babe.
Thanks. But what I was trying to say, going back to this scenario, is that when we talked about getting married, we tried to be more logical about like the blending of our family and like how this would play out. Because sometimes, I don't know if you would agree, Chris, people get so wrapped up in love and like the illusion of love that they forget about the hard work that it takes to keep a marriage together.
Right. It does. It's not easy.
Yeah. And so, we just thank you, everybody, for sticking with us and for encouraging us along this journey and for listening to Shannon's great interview today. And the one tidbit we would leave you with this week is to think of how you might be able to sit and hear the story of another person without having to make it about you or get defensive. And how can we create more space to each other so that we can come together?
That sounds wonderful, babe. And that was not scripted, everybody. It was perfectly off the cuff.
Yeah, it was. And so with that, thank you for sticking with us for our first episode of year number 2.
And we will see you guys next week.
Remember this week that life is too short to wake up in the morning with regret.
So love the people who treat you right, forget about the ones who don't, and believe that everything happens for a reason.
If you get a chance, take it. If it changes your life, let it. Nobody said that it would be easy.
They just promised it would be worth it. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Chris.
And I'm Christine. And until next week,
keep moving forward.